Hello everybody, my name is Mahda. This presentation is about a joint study at Corofronis' lab at the Department of Geography along with the Department of Geosciences and Penn State Center for Immersive Experiences directed by Professor Alexander Klippel. This study is about visualizing three-dimensional subsurface data in an immersive learning environment in the context of undergraduate education. The focus of this study is an empirical study we conducted at an introductory geoscience course to examine the role of immersive VR in fostering penetrative thinking. The ability to understand spatial relations inside an object and transform 3D data into a 2D profile is called penetrative thinking. Students in geosciences usually visualize the 3D structure of objects presented on 2D interfaces, for example desktop computers, and then extract 2D profiles from the 2D representation of the data. The 3D block diagram shown in this slide is an example of a geologic structure represented in 2D. In terms of geological data visualization in IVR, especially subsurface data, there are limited numbers of research studies that present empirical evidence on the effectiveness of the developed applications, most of which have not focused on HMDs. IVR enables immersion in a three-dimensional environment with 6 degrees of freedom to interact with objects in their native three-dimensional form. 6 degrees of freedom refers to 3 translational movements and 3 rotational movements in IVR, which is one of the most important features that can enhance embodiment and interaction to a higher level, and potentially improve penetrative thinking by supporting both 3D and interactive representation. To summarize the objectives of our study, the goal was to examine the role of immersive experiences for visualizing 3D subsurface data and its effect on penetrative thinking. As a case study, we decided to create a 3D visualization of USGS Centennial Earthquake Catalog, Holocene volcanoes, and plate boundaries in IVR as an embodied and interactive learning platform to not only compare the traditional methods of teaching in classroom with 3D representation in IVR, but to improve a student's learning experience and learning performance. This study investigates two hypotheses through two experimental conditions, 2D maps versus IVR. In the first condition called 2D maps, traditional 2D maps represented on a 2D screen of a desktop computer. One map presented the USGS Centennial Earthquake Catalog and plate boundaries, and the other presented Holocene volcanoes and plate boundaries. Both maps were prepared in ArcGIS and exported as PNG files. The students accessed the maps via the Windows Photo Viewer as separate map sheets and could switch between these, but were not able to overlay them and see both maps at the same time. For each map, they could zoom in and out and explore the presented data by dragging the maps using a mouse. This video shows the immersive VR experience with an HTC Vive Pro headset. To create this experience, the shapefiles were imported into Blender using Blender GIS. Then they were imported to Unity as FBX files. The earthquakes and volcanoes were visualized in the form of point clouds. The world map and the datasets were scaled to the size of the play area. Both earthquake locations and volcanoes were properly georeferenced. Although the whole space can be visually perceived from one location, students could walk in the space by physically walking within the play area to examine specific locations. IVR was made interactive, enabling students to switch between these two datasets, drag and scale the map in every direction, and hear or see the information related to each dataset. Here is a brief overview of the experiment setup in terms of the procedure, measures, and data collected. In short, in a between-subject design of the experiment, 10 students randomly participated in the 2D maps condition and 11 students in the IVR condition. The session from start to end took around 40 minutes. In both conditions, students were given 15 minutes to freely explore the datasets. Students in the 2D maps condition were seated in front of a desktop computer for the entire duration of the experiment, while students who participated in the IVR condition put the VR headset on. As you can see, there were two locations for investigation during the experience, South America and Japan. After the experience, the students were given the task sheets for drawing the cross-sections across South America and Japan. They had 10 minutes, and while drawing the cross-sections, they did not have access to the maps or external information. Here are two examples of the cross-sections drawn by students after their observation. The table in this slide presents an overview of the experience measures. In terms of a spatial situation model or SSM, there were significant group differences in a score between the 2D maps and IVR conditions in favor of the IVR condition. The plot on the right shows a trend in which students with lower spatial visual imagery ability tend to rate IVR higher in creating a mental image or SSM compared to the 2D maps condition. Regarding the reflective thinking, the estimated Bayesian factor indicated that the students experienced a higher level of reflective thinking in IVR compared to the 2D maps condition. Open-ended feedback received from the students in both conditions has shown that IVR has the potential to improve a student's experience in terms of embodiment, spatial learning, memorization, and reflective thinking compared to the 2D maps condition. Both 2D maps and IVR conditions had the advantage of controlling the learning pace and sequence. The most negative aspect of the 2D maps condition, however, was the two-dimensional representation of 3D objects and not being able to spatially manipulate the data. The plot on the left shows the actual plot of earthquakes and volcanoes in South America and Japan, plotted with distance from the trench, west to east in South America and east to west in Japan. We focus on the students' understanding of the geometry of the two subduction zones rather than the actual precision of plotting the earthquakes. Therefore, the grading metrics were based on the shape and direction of each cross-section. The table on the right demonstrates a student's performance in drawing a cross-section across South America and Japan, regardless of the condition. Students had a significantly higher performance in terms of understanding the direction of the cross-sections across South America compared to Japan. We argue that the lower performance on drawing the cross-section across Japan in terms of direction might be because the arc is dipping to the west and students must translate events from east to west to distance from the trench on the plot. The table on the left shows the student performance in each task based on the conditions. The average grades of the students attending the IVR condition are higher than the 2D maps for all grading metrics. However, with respect to drawing a cross-section across South America, we did not observe any significant difference in performance between the two conditions. In terms of drawing a cross-section across Japan, we hope that with a larger sample size, a significant difference in performance between the two conditions could be detected. The effect size of the grades for the shape of the cross-section across Japan is twice as South America. This shows the positive effect of IVR as a medium on understanding the shape of Japan's cross-section as a challenging task compared to South America. In terms of the penetrative thinking test, the plot on the right shows the students with both lower and higher GBCT scores seem to perform better in IVR compared to the 2D maps condition. The result of our study shows that IVR creates a better learning experience. In terms of learning performance, the results suggest that the students had a significantly higher understanding of the direction of the cross-sections across South America compared to Japan. However, we did not find a significant difference in the graded exercise of drawing cross-sections based on the conditions. Almost all students drew the cross-sections too steep in both conditions. Most importantly, IVR seems to have a positive effect on understanding the geometry of earthquake locations in a complex tectonic environment such as Japan. The most important limitation of this pilot study was the small number of participants. This impeded us from drawing any conclusive statements regarding correlations between spatial abilities and performance between the two conditions. For future work, we would like to study the effect of IVR on students with lower spatial abilities. This pilot study revealed places for improvement in terms of the design of the experience and the post-study tasks for future work. First, the data provided in the 2D maps will be overlaid to give the students the ability to see both events in one frame. Second, the depth values of earthquakes will be divided into more categories to provide the opportunity of more detailed observation of the changes in depth values. Third, head and hand tracking will be added to the IVR experience to evaluate the level of interaction and embodiment. This is the end of our presentation. Please feel free to contact us under this email address here. Thank you very much for your attention.